questions in my head. On September 11, 2001, Americans were literally falling from the sky, jumping from the Twin Towers to escape the fires that had been set by Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. Today in Afghanistan, in Kabul airport, Afghans are falling from the sky, literally hanging onto the fuselages of American planes, desperately trying to escape the Taliban and Al-Qaeda, knowing that they will face certain death because they can't hang on to those planes. That is what's happening in Afghanistan today. It is the most shameful thing I have seen in my entire career in Washington. And you know what? It is shameful that Joe Biden hasn't spoken to the American people for 6 days while this plays out. But what could he say? How can you defend the indefensible? This is either Joe Biden completely miscalculated, in which case he's incompetent, or he knew that this would be the result and didn't care, in which case he's a horrible human being. In either case, the American people deserve better from their commander-in-chief. It's just the most shocking thing I've witnessed in my career in Washington.
I wondered about you today, Mark, in terms of what would you say? Like, what would you write for a president to say at this point? But I think that those comparisons are just impossible to make. You work for a very different president.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about this. Yes, indeed. You say that basically President Biden gave the Taliban the green light in April. Tell us more.
Yeah. So, you know, a lot of the Biden administration is blaming everybody but themselves. And one of the things they're saying is they're blaming Donald Trump and saying, well, Donald Trump signed this agreement with the Taliban and we were bound by it, so we had no choice but to withdraw. I mean, first of all, the Taliban violated that agreement, so they were not obligated to follow it. Second, they spent the last 8 months reversing every Trump policy you could possibly imagine, from Keystone XL to Nord Stream 2, Paris Climate Agreement, Iran nuclear agreement. But this is the one policy that they were absolutely obligated to keep in place. And the reality is, the difference is, I was very critical of Trump's plans for withdrawal from Afghanistan, but he at least said that his withdrawal would have been conditions-based, based on conditions on the ground. Joe Biden explicitly said when he announced this, that this would not be a conditions-based withdrawal from Afghanistan. He said that if we waited for the right conditions, we would never leave. And so what that did was that sent a message to the Taliban that you have green light to do whatever you want in Afghanistan. It gave them a green light for the offensive they're taking place, because they knew no matter what they did, no matter how they responded, we were leaving no matter what. And so Biden is responsible for unleashing this Taliban assault that is so devastated and taken over the country.
You know, Mark, if you went back to 2009, 12 years ago, when President Obama was making a decision as to whether he was going to beef up forces or not, he chose to beef up forces. His vice president, Joe Biden, at the time, disagreed with that. He thought a strike force was much more appropriate to fight that battle. Prior to that, he thought you should break up Iraq into 3 different parts: Sunni, Shiite, and Kurd. Ambassador Crocker, Ryan Crocker, I mean, he spent the last 20 years of his life in these places. Kabul and Baghdad. He said this. He said, it's insane, just idiotic, to think that we can tell the Taliban if they don't stop taking over territory and play nice, the international community will withhold recognition and support. I'm left with some grave questions in my mind about his ability to lead our nation as commander-in-chief. To have read this so wrong, or even worse, to have understood what was likely to happen and not care. End quote.
Yeah. I mean, Robert Gates said it best. Joe Biden has been wrong on every major foreign policy decision in the last 50 years. I mean, it's just a fact. And here's the other thing that really angers me, is how they're out there. I mean, they're blaming the victim. They're blaming the Afghan army for collapsing, saying how we trained them and we gave them the best equipment and they just decided not to fight. I went back and looked at the numbers. We transferred the combat mission to the Afghan army in 2015. And since then, there have been between 54,000 and 58,000 Afghan soldiers who were killed in combat fighting the Taliban. Just this year, through August 5th, there have been 2,600 Afghan fighters who have been killed in combat. These people have been fighting and dying and sacrificing their lives to fight our enemies as well as theirs. And one of the things we did in Afghanistan in 2015 is we were not there nation building. We were not even fighting the war. What we were doing was we were providing them what Jack Keane described on your show earlier. We were providing them with intelligence, mission planning, and air support. And it's clear they couldn't defend the country without that. Name me a U.S. ally anywhere in the world who could. Do you think South Korea could defend itself against a North Korean invasion without the U.S. military there? If they could, then we should get out. Do you think Taiwan could defend itself against the Chinese invasion without the U.S. military? Japan, Germany, any of these countries could have defended. Germany could have defended itself against the Soviet invasion. Ukraine could defend itself against Russia. No U.S. ally in the world could defend itself without some sort of level of U.S. support. That's why we have troops stationed in Korea. That's why we have troops in Japan. That's why we had troops in Germany during the Cold War to prevent a Soviet invasion over the Fulda Gap. So all these people running around blaming the Afghan army because we abandoned them and then saying they didn't fight is just shameful. It's victim shaming. You know, that we abandoned these people. The goal in Afghanistan was not to create a Jeffersonian democracy. The goal in Afghanistan was to make sure that there was a government in place that didn't wake up every morning saying that America must be destroyed and provide sanctuary to terrorists who wanted to actively destroy America. That mission was being accomplished by our United States military in Afghanistan.
Mark?
We were succeeding. We were doing it with 2,600 troops, which is less than we have in Spain today. And the idea that we pull that out and abandon that country to give it back, hand it back to the Taliban is shameful.
Wow. Mark, we're coming up on the 20th anniversary of 9/11, and you know, we'll be covering it. Everyone's going to be covering it. There's going to be a lot of speeches by a lot of different people, and I know that you pay a lot of attention to the words spoken. But what do you think? Forecast ahead, 4 weeks from now, when we get to that day.
I can't imagine. I quite frankly, I would be surprised if Joe Biden wasn't booed when he showed up at Ground Zero. I mean, on the anniversary of September 11, 2001, 20th anniversary, September 11, 2001, he has handed Afghanistan back to the people who gave sanctuary and harbored and aided and abetted the people who brought down those towers.
Now there's some families who are already requested that he does not show. Go ahead.
He really shouldn't show his face. I mean, normally my view is the commander-in-chief, if you don't like the person, you respect the office, it doesn't matter who it is. But to have so explicitly, you know, they're celebrating in Guantanamo Bay today.
Yeah.
Khalid Sheikh Mohammed predicted this. He told his interrogator right after he was captured, he said, you Americans, what you don't understand is we don't have to defeat you militarily. We only have to wait long enough for you to defeat yourselves by quitting. He predicted this day would come. And on the 20th anniversary of the attack that he carried out, it's come true because of Joe Biden.
Sobering, but also very true. Mark Thiessen.
Mark, thank you. Mark Thiessen,
Appreciate it.
Washington.
Thanks, Dana. Thanks, Bill.